At 3 minutes past 9 on a Thursday morning, two black SUVs rolled into the parking lot of Fairlane Foods Store 114, and the district manager forgot how to breathe. He recognized the tall man in the gray suit before the sliding doors finished opening. Everyone in the chain knew that face. It sat on the cover of the annual report, gathering dust in every manager's office, above a name printed in small type at the bottom of every paycheck in the building. On the man's arm walked a woman of 81 in a wool coat, a cane in her free hand, her eyes already sweeping the front end for someone. She found him at the customer service counter, a tired man in a borrowed hoodie, holding his daughter's hand, waiting to collect the final check from the job he had lost 24 hours earlier. The store manager who fired him stepped forward, wearing his best welcome smile. He had no idea he was watching the end of his own career walk through the door. If you already feel it, that tightening in your chest, hit the like button and subscribe to Hidden Ledger. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from, because this story is just getting started. And the part they don't see coming, keep watching. To understand that Thursday morning, you have to go back 30 hours into the worst storm the city had seen in 40 years. It came in sideways on a Tuesday night. By midnight, Harlan Creek had left its banks. By 3 in the morning, half the east side had no power. The underpass on Delridge was a lake, and the rain sounded like gravel thrown against the windows. At 10 minutes to 5, Marcus Hale stood in the dark beside his pickup truck, turning the key to a clicking sound he knew too well. The battery was done. The truck was 17 years old, and it had picked its morning. Marcus was 36. He stocked shelves on the overnight and early crew at Fairlane Foods, the discount grocery on Delridge, and he could not afford to lose that job. 2 years earlier, his wife Sarah had died, and the bills that followed her had eaten everything they ever saved. What remained was a 2-bedroom apartment on Garfield Street, a daughter named Maya, and a rule Marcus kept without ever saying it out loud. Maya came first, always. It was why there was already one write-up in his file. From the afternoon, the school nurse called and he left mid-shift without waiting for permission. Maya was 8. She folded paper stars out of gum wrappers and receipts and left them in his jacket pockets. Luck you can hold, she called them. He carried one every day because she checked. The night before the storm, the store manager, Derek Pruitt, had gathered the crew by the time clock, under the framed letter from 4 years back welcoming Fairlane into the family of its new parent company. Nobody ever read that letter. Derek tapped the schedule and said the district office was coming Wednesday for a full walkthrough, and the store would be perfect, and anyone who was even 1 minute late for the 6 o'clock all hands should not bother clocking in at all. He looked at Marcus when he said it. So when the truck died, Marcus zipped his fleece, put his phone in his chest pocket, and started walking. 2 miles. He had done it before. He gave himself 70 minutes and took the detour around the flooded underpass, down a residential street called Linden, where old porches leaned toward each other in the dark, and the water ran ankle-deep along the curbs. He almost missed her. The wind was carrying everything sideways. Trash cans, branches, sound itself. But somewhere under all of it he caught something small and human, and he stopped, and he listened, and it came again. At the corner of Linden and 5th, where a storm drain had clogged the way it apparently always did, a woman was down in the runoff. She was gray-haired and soaked through, one arm hooked through a chain-link fence to keep the current from taking her, and the water was moving at her waist. She had been there long enough that her lips had gone the wrong color. Marcus went in without deciding to. The cold hit like a slammed door. He got his arms under her and lifted her against the pull of the water, and she was light the way very old people are light, which is to say she weighed nothing and everything at once. "I'm all right," she said, which was a lie, and they both knew it. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "Where's home?" She lifted one shaking hand toward the end of the block. White house, blue door. He tried 911 first, bracing her against his chest with the rain hammering both of them. A busy tone, then a recording, then nothing, because the phone had drowned in his pocket the moment he knelt in the water, and it never woke up again. The road was closed at both ends. No headlights were coming. So Marcus Hale did the only thing left. He carried her. A block and a half does not sound like far. In knee-high moving water, in 40-mile-an-hour wind, with an 81-year-old woman shivering against your collarbone. It is a country. He talked the whole way to keep her with him. He told her his name, He told her about Maya, and the paper stars, and the spelling test on Friday, and the pancakes he had promised for after it. She hung onto his jacket with both fists and once, into the wind, she said, "Keep talking, Marcus." And he did. Her name was Margaret. She had lived in the White House with the blue door for 50 years. She had gone out at first light to clear that drain at the corner, because it clogged in every storm and flooded half the street, and she had called the city about it for 30 years. And the city had never once come, and this time the water had been faster than her legs. She told him all of this at her kitchen table, wrapped in every blanket he could find, while the kettle heated on the gas stove, and the power stayed dead, and his shift started without him a mile away. He could not leave her. That was the whole of it. Her landline was down with the rest of the block. Her ankle was swelling, and her hands would not stop shaking. So Marcus fed the fire in a fireplace that had not been lit in years, and made tea, and watched the clock on the wall eat his job 1 minute at a time, and stayed. The house told a story he was too cold and too tired to read. It was small and worn and stubborn, but the photographs on the mantel were not. In one of them, a young man in a hard hat stood at a ribbon cutting in front of a building with too much glass, and Margaret stood beside him in the same wool coat, 30 years younger. Marcus glanced at it and thought, "Good for him," and went back to the kettle. At 7:30, a neighbor named Dot came through the rain, a retired nurse from 3 doors down, and pronounced the ankle sprained and the woman too stubborn to die. Margaret refused the hospital with 2 words and a look. Then she sent Dot to the pantry for something, and while they were alone, she took an envelope from an old coffee tin and pressed it toward Marcus with both hands. He folded her fingers back over it. "Get warm," he said. "That's the payment." She studied him for a long moment, the way people study a document before they sign it. "Marcus Hale," she said. "Hale. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." And when he mentioned he was 2 hours late for Fairlane on Delridge, something shifted behind her eyes, quick as a fish under ice. "Store 114, she said, quietly, precisely, like a woman reading a line off a page she had read before. He didn't notice. He was already at the door. At the last second he came back, dug into his soaked pocket, and set a small paper star on the table beside her teacup. It was wrinkled and half drowned, and holding its shape anyway. "My daughter makes these," he said. "House rule. Nobody has a bad night without one." Then he was gone into the rain. He reached his own street at 8:05, because Mrs. Okafor next door had kept Maya overnight and had a shift of her own to get to. School was canceled. There was no sitter and no time and no dry shirt worth changing into. So Marcus took his daughter's hand and walked her the last stretch to the store, rehearsing an explanation he never got to give. The floor was set for the district visit. End caps squared, floors gleaming. Derek Pruitt stood at the front in his good tie, and when the doors slid open on a soaked man and a little girl at 8:40 in the morning, the whole front end went quiet to watch. 2 hours and 40 minutes, Derek said. He held up a hand before Marcus got a word out. "No, everyone in this building drove through the same storm. Marcus, they managed. You've got 30 seconds, and there was a storm doesn't count." "There was a woman in the water on Linden," Marcus said. "She's 81. The lines were down." "I couldn't." "There's always a story," Derek said, to the room as much as to him. "Last time it was the school nurse. Today it's a mystery grandmother." He put out his flat palm like Marcus was a shoplifter surrendering merchandise. "Vest, name tag, box cutter. No call, no show on a district day is job abandonment." "That's not me, that's policy." Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then he took off the vest, folded it once, and set it on the counter. He unpinned the name tag, the one with the small gold star sticker Maya had pressed onto the corner of it a year ago, and he laid it in Derek's open hand. Derek dropped it into the trash can beside Register 4 without looking at it. Maya's voice came up from beside Marcus's hip, clear as a bell in the silence. He was helping a grandma. She fell in the water. Derek smiled at the room. "Now there's a witness," he said, and somebody near the bakery laughed, and a shift lead named Kyle held his phone a little higher than he needed to and kept filming. Within the hour that video would be in the store group chat with the caption, "Storm claims another one lol." Within a day, it would be somewhere Kyle never imagined. One person crossed the floor. Rosa Delgado, the front-end lead, 22 years at that store, walked off her register, put put a hot chocolate from the cafe case into Maya's hands, and said, loud enough for Derek and the tie and the whole gleaming front end, "Your dad is the best worker in this building. Everyone here knows it. Careful, Rosa," Derek said. She held his stare 1 second longer than was safe and went back to her register. At the door, Derek delivered the last of it. "Payroll cuts your final check tomorrow, 9 o'clock. A pause, and then the sentence he would spend the rest of his career wishing back. "Use the customer entrance. You're not an employee anymore." Marcus walked his daughter home through the dripping streets, still in his wet clothes, carrying a cardboard box with a coffee mug and a spare undershirt in it. Maya didn't say much. Halfway home she stopped, folded the sleeve of her hot chocolate cup into a small, crooked paper star, and pressed it into his palm. "For the next job," she said. He put it in his chest pocket, where the phone used to be, and kept walking. If this story found its way to you, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Hidden Ledger posts new stories every week, and the one after this one is already waiting. Your support is what keeps the Ledger open. Across town, in the White House with the blue door, the power came back at noon, and a telephone began to ring. The man calling had been calling since dawn. He was in Chicago when the storm made the national news, and his mother had not answered 14 times. And by the time his assistant finally reached the nurse and heard the words, "She's fine," a young man pulled her out of the water. Alexander Rowe had already ordered the plane. Alexander was 54 years old and the chairman of Rowe Holdings, an investment group whose portfolio was long enough that most people only ever saw one piece of it at a time. 4 years earlier, one of those pieces had been a failing discount grocery chain called Fairlane Foods. 312 stores, bleeding money, a week from liquidation. He had bought it for one reason. His mother had asked him to. "Those stores fed this neighborhood when nobody else would," she had said. And Arthur would have wanted them saved, and that had been the end of the discussion, because nobody in 50 years had ever won a discussion with Margaret Rowe. She had raised Alexander in the White House on Linden Street, and when the money came, and then the buildings, and then the magazine covers, she had declined every one of his invitations to leave it. Her husband had built that porch. Her son could build whatever he liked somewhere else. Alexander landed at 6 that evening and drove straight through the wrecked streets, and found his mother in her chair by the fire, her ankle wrapped and elevated, swimming in a navy fleece jacket 3 sizes too big for her. It said Fairlane Foods Team across the chest. Under the collar, on a small embroidered patch, it said Marcus. Beside her teacup sat a wrinkled paper star. She told him the whole thing plainly. The drain, the water, the fence, the cold arriving in her bones like a verdict, and then the arms that came out of the storm and did not let go for a block and a half. Alexander stood very still through all of it. When she got to the part where the water had been at her waist, he turned and looked out the black window for a while. "He was late for work because of me," Margaret said. "Store 114. Marcus Hale, Hale." She said the name the way she said everything, once, correctly, so it would stay said. "He has a little girl who makes these." She touched the star. He wouldn't take the envelope. "What do you want done?" Alexander asked. His mother looked at the fire, and then at him, and gave him 3 words he would repeat to himself the rest of his life. "Balance it, Alexander." It took his office 1 phone call to pull the roster of Store 114. It took 1 more to learn that Marcus Hale, overnight stock, 2 years, 1 write-up, had been terminated at 8:47 that morning. Reason for separation, job abandonment. No acceptable justification offered. 3 hours and 20 minutes after he lifted the chairman's mother out of the floodwater. By 9 that evening there was more. A time-stamped email in the district HR inbox, sent at 9:12 a.m., from a front-end lead named Rosa Delgado, subject line, "This was wrong." And a video, forwarded up the chain by someone with a conscience, of a soaked man standing silent while a manager in a good tie called the truth a story, and dropped a name tag with a child's gold star on it, into the trash. Alexander watched the video twice. He did not say anything either time. In the morning, Margaret was dressed before he was. In the wool coat, cane in hand, jaw set. "You'll frighten them into apologizing," she told her son in the car. "I intend to thank him. We'll see which one matters more." Thursday, 9 o'clock. Marcus stood at the customer service counter of Store 114, in a hoodie from Mrs. Okafor's lost and found box. Maya on the bench by the gumball machines. working on a new star. Derek was 15 feet away, walking the district manager through the front end, in an even better tie than yesterday, and he had glanced at Marcus exactly once, and told the counter clerk, "He can wait, I'm with corporate." Then the doors opened, and the SUVs emptied, and the temperature of the room changed before a single word was spoken. The district manager saw it first. His sentence died in the middle. The cashier on 3 saw it next, and then the one on 5, and phones started moving slowly toward pockets in the way phones do when people realize something is about to be worth remembering. Derek saw none of it. Derek saw a well-dressed older gentleman escorting an elderly customer on a morning when corporate was watching, and he crossed the floor with his arms open. "Welcome to Fairlane. Anything I can help you folks find today?" "Yes," Alexander Rowe said. "Marcus Hale." The smile held on by its fingertips. "I'm sorry, he's no longer with the company. If there's something else." But the elderly customer was already past him. Margaret went down the front end with her cane clicking on Derek's perfect floors, past the registers, past the district manager, all the way to the tired man at the customer service counter, and took his arm with both hands like she was reclaiming luggage. "You didn't call to check on me," she said. "My phone drowned, ma'am," Marcus said, when he could speak. "Margaret," she corrected. Maya slid off the bench and stared up at her. "You're the grandma, and you're the star maker," Margaret said, and drew from her coat pocket a wrinkled paper star, kept the way people keep things that matter. Derek arrived at the edge of it, managing hard, voice pitched for the district manager's ears. "Folks, if this concerns yesterday's separation, that was a straightforward policy matter. Job abandonment during a critical business day. We hold a high standard here, and—" Margaret turned. She did not raise her voice. She had never once needed to. "He was late because he was carrying me." The sentence crossed the front end faster than the intercom ever had. Registers stopped. A stock cart rolled to rest on its own. Derek blinked at her, recalibrating, and said, "I'm sorry. And you are—" It was the district manager who answered, in the small, careful voice of a man watching a cliff arrive. "Derek," a breath. "That's Alexander Rowe. This is his company." You could see the information land in stages. Derek looked at the tall man in the gray suit, then at the sliding doors, where a decal he had walked past every morning for 4 years read, in letters 4 inches under the Fairlane leaf, "A Rowe Holdings Company." Then at the counter, where a lifetime of paychecks had carried a small printed footer nobody ever read. His hand drifted out and straightened a candy display that was already straight. Alexander unfolded a single sheet of paper. "Reason for separation, job abandonment," he read. "Employee offered no acceptable justification." He looked up. He offered one. "My mother. There's video of you receiving it." He let that sit. "It reached my office before I finished breakfast. Somewhere near the bakery." Kyle went the color of the tile. "Who filmed it?" Alexander asked the room. Nobody moved. Then a hand rose, halfway, and stopped, and stayed there, which was somehow worse. Alexander held the young man's eyes for a moment. "Thank you for the evidence," he said, and moved on, and Kyle stood for a long time afterward, with the hand he couldn't seem to put down. Derek found his footing the only place left to find it. "Mr. Rowe, sir, if I had known who she was." "I believe that completely," Alexander said. "That's the problem." "He laughed at my granddaughter," Margaret said. Then she paused and corrected herself, and the correction was its own small earthquake. "At his daughter. She told you the truth, and you laughed at her in front of this whole store." The reckoning was quiet, and it was complete, and it happened in the same 15 feet of floor where the humiliation had. The district manager began a sentence about scheduling a review, and Alexander said, "Today," and that was the whole negotiation. Derek Pruitt was relieved of Store 114 pending investigation, at the same counter where he had held out his flat palm the day before. He packed his office into a cardboard box while the morning crew found silent reasons to work nearby. He was given the one thing Marcus never got, the invitation to explain. He stood there with his box and could not think of a story. At the doors, he stopped in front of the man he had fired. He opened his mouth. Nothing useful was in it. "Your kids get through the storm all right?" Marcus asked. Derek nodded. "Once." "Good," Marcus said. Derek carried that word out of the building like it weighed more than the box. Then Alexander turned to the room and asked who had sent the email at 9:12. Rosa stepped out from Register 3 with her chin up The way she had held his manager's stare a second too long the day before, ready to pay for it if that was the price. It wasn't. Effective immediately, Store 114 had a new manager, and the district office had until Friday to make the paperwork match. Maya tugged Marcus's sleeve. "She's the hot chocolate lady. Then we're in excellent hands," Alexander said. Finally, he faced Marcus, and everyone in the store leaned a quarter-inch closer. "Name what you're owed," Alexander said. "Back pay is a given. Beyond that, anything." Marcus looked at his daughter, then at the man whose signature had been at the bottom of every check he'd ever cashed at that counter. "My shift's back," he said. "Rent's due Monday, and I promised somebody pancakes on Friday." For a moment, nobody in the store made a sound, and then Margaret laughed, one dry, delighted note, and squeezed his arm like a woman collecting a bet she had placed the night before. Alexander studied him a long moment. "No," he said, "not the shifts." And before the floor could drop out of Marcus's face, he explained, the storm had shown him a hole in his own company. 312 stores, and in not one of them was there a policy protecting an employee who stopped to save a life. That was changing, effective this week, in writing. Storm kits at every front end. A neighbor assistance program run out of the stores that were built to be neighbors in the first place. An emergency leave rule so that, in his words, no one who works for this company will ever again have to choose between a paycheck and a person. He wanted someone to build it, someone who understood it in his hands and not just on paper, and he wanted it based at Store 114, and he named a salary, and Marcus made him repeat it, and he repeated it without blinking. There was one more thing. That morning, an account had been opened, the first in a new scholarship fund for the children of Fairlane employees. The founding account was in the name of Maya Hale. Through all of it, Margaret never let go of Marcus's arm. When the talking was done, she looked up at him and issued a ruling. "You'll come Sunday," she said. It was not a question. "Bring the Star Maker. 3 months is enough time for a company to change its weather." The program went into every store, kits by the registers, ride boards by the doors, and the new leave rule that no employee ever calls by its official name. Inside the company, they just call it the Linden Rule. The storm drain at Linden and Fifth, the one the city had ignored for 30 years, was rebuilt in 9 days. Because it turned out the city returned some phone calls faster than others. Rosa's store led the district that quarter in every number that mattered, and one that didn't. Hot chocolates given away. Kyle still works there. He's different now. He's the first one out the door with a cart and an umbrella when rain catches a customer in the lot, and nobody ever asked him to be. The review of Derek Pruitt found what everyone already knew it would. He manages again, somewhere smaller, and the people who work for him say he is slow to raise his voice, as if he learned something expensive once. Some accounts settle quietly. On Sundays, there is dinner at the White House with the blue door. Margaret loses at gin rummy to an 8-year-old and disputes every hand. On the windowsill where she can see it from her chair sits a jar, filling slowly with paper stars, because Maya decided an old woman should have enough luck on hand for any dark night the sky can invent. And when the big rains come, 2 figures in raincoats walk to the corner of Linden and Fifth and check a drain that no longer clogs. And check it anyway. Together. At the store's family day that spring, a new hire found Maya decorating cookies at the kids' table and asked, the way adults do, what her dad did there. Maya thought about the badge, and the office in the back, and the program with the long official name. Then she gave the only answer that has ever really covered it. He picks people up. Somewhere on Linden Street, a paper star caught the afternoon light on a windowsill. The ledger had been open the whole time. It usually is. Thank you for staying until the balance was restored. The people who watch to the end are the ones who understand why the ledger matters. If this story stayed with you, the videos on your screen right now are ready to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, the ledger has your name. Hidden Ledger. Every account settles.